welcome to the official Lakes International Comic Art Festival podcast. My name's Ian.
And my name's Nikki, bringing you the best in comics and graphic novels and updates from the festival.
Hello and welcome to the Lakes International Comic Art Festival podcast, episode 16. My name's Ian.
And I'm Nikki.
And we're sort of doing a half-baked podcast today.
Well, there is a reason for it. It's not half-baked. That's not fair.
Well, we're giving Mike and Pete a week off.
Yep.
Because they've been busy with the festival and stuff.
Yeah, bless them.
And you've had cat problems. I was going to say something else then, but I won't.
Definitely cat issues, which resulted in bank balance issues.
Bank balance issues.
Yeah.
Drained. Christmas is cancelled.
It's just one mince pie for everyone now.
So we just not had time to put what we need to put into the show.
Florence Nightingale of the cat world now.
Meow.
Meow.
So before we throw on what we've got for you today,
you're going to throw something on.
Which is
He's doing this naked.
Panel. A panel from the festival.
Yes.
Just a quick few things, right? So we wanted to do a full review on Thor Raganrok. Thor. However,
yes.
We haven't really got the time, so we're just going to give our brief impressions of it. Because no point leaving until next episode, because by that time it's gone from the theatres.
Everyone's seen it.
So, what do you think of it?
I really liked it because it ticks off my boxes for what I like in a action film, which is less gritty and more fun.
There is no grit.
There's no grit.
It
None.
is very fun.
Yes, it's a very different kind of story arc for it, really.
Well, no, I think the story arc is could be fit in anything. It's more the stylization.
That's kind of what I meant. Yeah.
And the comedy elements.
It's gone off on a tangent from the other Thor films. But I think the top bods at Marvel have gone, Avengers works really well. To apply this to everything.
You mean Guardians?
Yeah, that one. Guardians. Sorry, do you know in your brain? Look, okay, I've been looking after I've put hot water bottles under him.
We've not seen any of the directors of the films, Taika Waititi, but they're supposedly meant to be very funny and very similar.
Right, so that's the director they got, yeah.
And so they've allowed him to go and do it, and it works.
I can understand some people don't like it, but personally, I love it.
I've not really heard anyone. It's really odd, but nothing.
Oh, yeah, no, some people. I think it's kind of a Marmite film, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I don't care.
No, it was very, very
and Chris
funny.
Helmsworth takes a lot of his clothes off, so perfectly fine.
Tut. There was only one moment, though, and this is the only negative.
Go on.
That made me go, yes.
Oh, so hang on. How is this a negative when you go, yes?
Because I'm comparing it now to Wonder Woman.
Oh, okay.
And there was multiple moments where you were like, go on. Mm-hmm. And there was only one moment towards the end that made you go, yes.
Okay, which one was that?
Well, I can't really say.
Okay.
Well, I suppose I can. Thor, when he realises what he can do.
Okay.
And he goes,
Metamorphosis of Thor.
The final sort of fight scene, which happens in
all
majority
films.
of
all
films.
Yeah.
And then you get sort of your heart go on.
Yeah, go on. Get him. Yeah.
But the funniest character is probably Korg.
Yes, I agree. With his little...
But he actually
thing.
voices in his New Zealand type accent, which is funny. Mm-hmm. But no, the film's good. Well worth a watch.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Definitely well worth a watch.
I'd watch it again.
I was on a podcast this week as well.
You were, whilst I was nursing.
The Awesome Comics podcast had me on. Now...
I was sitting in Catwee at the time.
You were?
Yeah.
And the reason I'm saying this is because I think I let the show down a little bit.
It's because you didn't have me.
It's true. There's a review section.
People.
The guys are brilliant, and they know what they're talking about comics way more than I do.
Yeah.
Their history of comics is so more deeper than what mine is.
Yeah.
But their reviews as well. I mean, bear in mind they're over 100 episodes in.
They know what they're doing, yeah.
Very detailed, and they take a review each, and it's very different to what we do because we talk about it together.
That's not a bad thing.
And so, well, it is when I'm on there trying to review.
Because
my reviews don't come across the same way because I'm so used to and I only realised this when I was doing it.
Bouncing it off me,
essentially,
darling.
yeah. So
see, you're nothing without me. I am the star.
I apologise. It wasn't as good as it should have been, but yeah, go and have a listen to the show. It's really good. Talking about conventions and so forth, and listen to the show every week. To be honest, it links well with ours because they have a guest talking about a topic, whereas we have a guest talking about themselves.
Yes,
very different style.
Well, that's good. It means we can work hand in glove.
Hand in glove. Who's got the glove? Are you saying one side's like a bit minging?
No, I didn't mean that. That means like hand in hand, isn't it? But hand in glove. Does that mean it's closer? Have I got that saying wrong?
I just see a man
Is
with
Chris
a glove.
going to send me an abusive text later?
Maybe a murderer holding the glove.
I'm not sure that's what it means.
Or adult and child taking him away to...
Child catcher.
Anyway. Who's the child catcher of the podcasting
That was
scene?
a very, very scary character in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
All right, we need to do a little announcement for Myraid.
Yes.
A wonderful publisher. They're on a call out for entries for the 2017 First Graphic Novel Competition.
Oh, it is a must.
Which Gareth Brooks winner, you know what I mean? It gives you an opportunity, if you win this prize, to go on and get some books out there and have that support. So it's its third year. Mm-hmm. The competition prize is for the creator of the winning entry to work with Myraid editorial team towards publication of their first full-length work.
That's brilliant.
There's numerous judges, so you know you're going to have a really good opportunity.
It's a golden ticket, isn't it?
The competition calls for a 15 to 30 page graphic work, which has never been published in any way, shape or form. Mm-hmm. The competition is open until 12 noon on Wednesday the 28th of February 2018, and the winner will be announced at an event in May. There's a link on our notes. Mm-hmm. Go read.
Yes.
If you are an artist of some type or comic creator of some type, why not have a go?
It's a no-brainer, isn't it?
Exactly. Why not have a go? Check it out, and we'll keep an eye on that when they launch, when they do the announcement of who wins and stuff, and we'll maybe even get them on the show and have a chat.
I was just thinking that'd be a good idea.
See how they feel and what the plans are for the future.
Yeah.
So we've got on now a panel from the festival.
Yay!
It's Meet the Mighty One, a celebration of 2000 AD, which we talked about last episode. It's got Steve MacManus, Sean Phillips, Duncan Fegredo, and Pete Doherty, hosted by John McShane. Mm-hmm. It's an hour's worth of 2000 AD goodness.
Yes. If you love 2000 AD, this is a must to listen to.
This is.
Maybe buy the book. And when you listen to it, you'll understand.
And I'm just reaching over a piece of paper.
You are.
So, future guests. So I'm going to announce all the next line.
Are you
going to
do
guests.
it? Whoa.
So that's just.
I would do a drum roll, but I'm going to have this Baileys instead.
That's all right. Let's hope that it all pans out how we want it to. So, next episode, we have got Yom and Corey Brotherson of the Clockwork Watch comics.
Yes.
Then we have Tilly Walden coming on, which I'm really looking forward to. Mm-hmm. Our Christmas episode, New Year, is going to be the Etherington Brothers.
I may possibly cry with delight.
That's going to follow early New Year with the girls from the Glue Pop Books.
Oh, they are so nice. They've been so lovely about my cat. They have. They've been lovely. So they're my new favourite people of the world.
So they're going to be there. And then we're going to have Chris Butcher, which we've recorded already, but we're going to leave it till towards early next year, because then we can look at the Toronto Comic Art Festival as well and do a few things around that. So that is coming up. Back to normal as of next episode. Yep. Until then, enjoy this this wondrous event.
Yes.
Piece recorded. And the sound quality came through really well. I'm surprised.
It did, didn't it? Our little gadget was good.
It's wonderful. Thank you very much, and we will see you 1st of December when Christmas music will be allowed.
Yes! Will you get the decorations out the loft for me?
I will do. Bye then.
No, by my birthday.
Enjoy. Bye.
Bye.
You know what would make Nikki really, really happy? If you click through our Amazon link when you buy your lovely presents from amazon.co.uk.
Welcome everybody. Have we got a treat for you today? But unfortunately that's not till 2:30, so we're going to just talk to these guys first. First of all, thanks to Arts Council England, who've been very good to me, and I want you to know that when Nicola manages to get independence for us, we are taking Arts Council England. So just so you know in advance. Apologies from Pete Milligan. If you came to see him, the pub doesn't open for half an hour, so you might as well stay here. Pete's not very well at the moment. He went to New York and caught a bad flu. He could have come to Glasgow and caught a bad flu. I don't know why I had to go to New York. So I'd just like to introduce you to the reconstituted panel. We put out a bid for a guy called Pete, so we have Pete Doherty. We have Duncan Fegredo, Sean Phillips, and somebody who knows a couple of things about 2000 AD, Steve MacManus. A big welcome to him. Steve, I'm told you've got a book out. Is this true?
I happen to have a copy here. Yes, it's called The Mighty One, My Life Inside the Nerve Centre, i.e. Bog's Command Module. It's about 200 pages, a 4-hour read.
There's no index at the back, so we couldn't look ourselves up. You've got to read the whole thing.
But there are some rather groovy photos.
Photos are great.
The photos, yeah. Well, I like the ones of you as Action Man.
Right.
Yeah. Now, you were
signed one of those.
You too? Yeah.
Have you really?
Yeah.
From being a fanboy?
No. When we saw Steve earlier this year.
That's right.
It was a 10x8 glossy signed.
Oh, cool. I'll need to get one of them.
Closed. Don't worry.
Now, Steve, you get involved quite early on with 2000 AD, even though it was Pat Mill's secret project. How did that come about?
Well, I joined as a staffer on Prog 76, but we all knew Pat was up to something because he'd hidden himself away on an upper floor with Doug Church as a kind of art maestro.
Did you say Kevin O'Neill was involved early on?
Well, when I kind of dropped in on them, when it became more public, I saw Kevin O'Neill there with a gallon of white paint and a load of South American artwork, which was covered in the artist's description of blood, and Kev was whiting out the blood. So,
was this in the wake of Action being cancelled?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't think the message reached South America about toning down your art.
How bad was the Action thing in the office? Because comics are printed far in advance. I mean, so the comic had already been done.
Yeah, it was quite swift. 1 minute it was being published and the next it wasn't. And the copies that were in the process of being ready to print either never made it or were destroyed.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
Well, the famous prog that 30 copies of which exist, I think.
Oh, need to get one of them. Can you sign it?
If you've got £4,000, yeah.
Is that what it costs? Yeah.
On eBay, I think. Yeah. I don't have one myself.
Oh dear. So I can't mug you. No. Duncan, how did you become involved?
I didn't come involved until much later. Actually, it was with the launch of the Crisis.
I thought it was Crisis. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And what was the origin of Crisis? How did that all come about? How did they get in touch with you?
Steve just rang me out of the blue. I've got a feeling within 2 weeks I got offer of my first 2 jobs, and there's Kid Eternity for DC, which might have come first, and then I think it might have been actually on my birthday. You rang me about New Statesman Crisis, and so I chose to do that first because the original plan was to try and do stuff for 2000.
Yeah.
I sent you samples years ago, didn't I? And you sent me a very polite letter of rejection, which I got.
But they weren't covered with white, no?
Well, after I was spitting bile over it, and I sent an argumentative letter back. And Steve was great, actually. He sent me another letter explaining exactly why I was wrong, but not even in those terms. It was. I've probably still got the letter somewhere. I'm sure I have.
Keep it.
It was the best advice he could have given. It was lose these pages immediately. But Tom said why, so it was good.
But Crisis was quite a bold experiment. Did you enjoy doing Crisis? Did you enjoy doing New Statesman?
No, he didn't.
No.
I remember going around his house and going, I can't colour, I can't draw, I can't do this, I can't do that.
Well, I've never really done comics, I haven't. I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
Well, you'd only graduated from college like 3 or 4 months previously.
Well, I think it was about a year previously. I've been doing some other stuff, but in all that time I've done maybe 10 sample pages of things for various things. But most of the stuff that was known from me was the stuff I did at college, which was like an adaptation of Paradise Lost. And I do it with...
I saw that.
Yeah, it's like Transformers in Hell.
Transformers.
It was all robots and oddness. There's 30 big scratchy pen and ink drawings. And that sort of did the rounds and sort of got a certain amount of attention. It's what attracted DC as well, I think. But trying to actually translate that into anything to do with storytelling, and storytelling was always in my mind, and tame it and draw something normal was a challenge, to say the least. But it was, don't get me wrong, it was a really good experience. It was learning on the job, essentially. It all is.
John Smith script.
A John Smith script, terrifying. Yeah. It was trial by fire. I didn't know what I was doing, but seemed to get away with it okay.
You got away with it. Pete, what was your first experience with the group, the 2000 group?
Well, that's through Joe, because I knew Duncan for a couple of years.
Yeah.
When he lived in Leeds, when he was doing the New Statesman stuff, I was still at college. And through Duncan I met John and Chris Stanley, who were writing with John at the time.
John Smith?
Yeah, John Smith. And
you did a short for them, didn't you?
Yeah, well, Chris wrote I just needed somebody to write something so I could do some samples, and Chris wrote a story. And John gave me the first... John were a bit sceptical. I remember him being like, who's this bloke? Where's he come from? What's he do? And then we got to be mates.
That's exactly how he sounds.
Yeah, and still.
I thought I was there.
Yeah. I was there. I was convinced.
Hang on, I'll put my hand on the sleeve. And anyway, so he did something. So I had 2 5-page stories, and I showed them to Steve at a Glasgow thing.
I remember it was in a kind of a corridor.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking this is quite nice stuff.
Glasgow Convention was very small. It was in a corridor.
Yeah.
And it was part of the town hall, wasn't it?
And coming down the corridor was John Wagner. And at the time, John and I weren't talking really.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, which are in the book.
So you have to buy that.
So John just stops and looks at Pete's artwork and he goes, that's good. And then off he goes. Whereas if we had been talking, I could have said to him, John, wow, look at this, But it must have stayed in John's memory because Young Death.
Yeah, that's what
he asked for you.
Yeah. Oh, did he ask for me?
Yeah.
From meeting him in a corridor in Glasgow?
Well, roughly.
Yeah.
I mean,
wow. See how things are?
So I just dropped on, all these people who go, I've spent years doing drawings for whatever it was, and I just did these things and got in.
It's mostly happy accident, though, isn't it?
Well, I was interviewing Art Adams years ago, and this is the entire interview. So, how did you get a job at Marvel? He says, I was working in a pizza shop and I sent them samples and they sent me a script and I drew my comic.
I love that story.
That's a good one.
Sean, what was your first experiences?
Well, I did it in a much more formal way. I'd already been drawing comics for about 7 or 8 years before Crisis. My first Fleetway stuff was Crisis rather than 2008.
Yeah.
Same time as Duncan. And I'd already been working on girls' comics for about 8 years by then. I had an agent, and he knew that Crisis was starting. So even before Crisis came out, it was already obvious that apart from Carlos, no one else could keep up the schedule. So he was already looking for people to fill in on new stations. So Duncan did a couple of episodes, I did a couple of episodes. Yeah. So that was it really. But
how old were you when you did your first Crisis?
I was 23 by then. I was 15 when I started doing the girls' comics.
Yeah.
When you were doing your girls' comics,
I did have another meeting at Fleetway a couple of years before that when I was still at college. I had somewhere in London working on a placement while I was still at college, and I came in on, I think I saw Dove Church.
Okay,
and he gave me a 3-page war story to draw.
Nice.
Which never got published, I think, because it was absolutely terrible. I was just.
Did you get paid?
You weren't right.
Yeah.
Oh well, it doesn't matter.
It's in my book. It's in my art book. If anybody's got that, I've got of it is photocopies that they sent me back, and there's a red ring with it around everything that was redrawn, which is probably 2/3 of it. It was a war story which I wasn't remotely interested in, and it was really hard to research all this stuff back then before the internet and that. So I couldn't even get the uniforms right or the guns and stuff. And
as a footnote to that, Doug Church is still alive, and I saw him in the summer, and he's exactly the same, except he wears a wig now, and he admits it. But it was nice to catch up with him. He is very much the fabric of those early days in 2000.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've just noticed there's no slides being shown.
Exactly that.
It took me 5 minutes to do those slides, so
Exactly that.
there we go. That's us. We're sorted. What was it? That threw me there. We've got the slides.
Sorry. We were talking to Sean about he started.
Well, that's right. And what happened after that, Sean? So
the war story thing just sort of like killed it dead for me at Fleetway. But I went to the same college Brian Talbot went to. He's about 15 years older than me, but he still lived in. He was in Preston, and he still lived there. And we had a tutor in common who was not against comics. So he said, "Oh, I know someone draws comics. Just go around and see him." So I went around and see Brian. I did a couple of Judge Dredd pages and took him around. And while I was stood in front of Brian, he was drawing Nemesis at the time. So it's about 85 maybe. And he rang Pat Mills up while I was stood in front of him and said, "Oh, I've got this kid here. You should give him a job." And I sent some more samples and stuff, and when Crisis came around and they were looking for people and my agent put me forward, Pat remembered my stuff. Not because it was any good particularly, but there was one really bad story that I drew about this girl who was really clumsy. She was trying to impress this boy, and she kept like, something was happening, so she'd be cheering him on the football pitch or whatever, and something would happen and he'd break his leg. And then she'd break her leg, and so by the end of the story, it's only like a 3-page story, she had a leg and an arm in plaster, so did he, and so did her dog. And Pat remembered this really terrible drawing of a dog with his leg in plaster.
I remember that.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
fine boy.
And it was so bad, that story was so bad that I drew it twice, but I do it because the first copy of it got lost in the post. A bit similar to that Steve Dillon story that he did for 2000 that day. Yeah. And that did fall behind a filing cabinet for years and never got. And then we redrew it over the weekend. I had to do the same thing with this. So the second version was even more bad than the one that I'd taken the time over.
Now you said you had an agent. That's quite unusual. Do you two guys?
No. They don't have such things no more. I mean, back then he had quite a big stable of artists. I know Chris Weston had an agent at the time as well. A guy called Pat who.
Kelleher.
Yeah, maybe.
Temple Art Agency.
He was friends with my agent Mike.
And Carlos had an agent, I think.
Yeah. Because back then there was a lot of comics that needed a lot of art. You know, there was probably 20 different anthology comics every week.
Yeah.
You know, the humour ones, the girls ones, the war ones, the sport comics, 2000 AD, and all that stuff. And you know, they were very good at coordinating all this and getting the work. You know, so everything I ever did for the girls stuff, I never met anybody involved with the publishing. It all went through my agent. I gave him the drawings. The scripts didn't have a name on, and I had no idea who wrote anything. So it wasn't until working on Crisis with Steve, it's the first editor I've ever met. It's all been downhill from there, obviously. And you know, I had no idea that comics was that sort of world you could actually get in and make friends there and stuff. You know, I was totally. You know, I was still drawing it in my bedroom because I was a kid.
Right. Okay. Steve, you were there at the time. All these. Innovations, Crisis, Revolver, there was another one, wasn't there?
Magazine.
That's right, yeah. It's Judge Dredd in that one, yeah.
Dice Man.
Did you, Dice Man, yes. Did you initiate all that, Steve?
No, Dice Man was Pat Mills' project, and his editor was my sub-editor, Simon Geller.
Simon Geller. So
the two of them put that together. But I don't think the management quite like Simon, so they kind of they never gave the Pat's project the kind of backup it could have received. And Dice Man, I think 5 issues.
Not many. And what about Revolver?
Revolver was a twinkle in my eye. I had the name. We'd seen where we'd gone wrong with Crisis, if you can call it wrong. And I just said to Pete Hogan, who became the editor, see what you can do with more of a kind of upbeat. Had
you been in Angoulême, Steve? Is that was my memory of it, that you'd been to Angoulême?
Yeah. That's very cold out there.
Yes, it is. Yes, makes Kendall look dry.
Yeah.
And was that what influenced you? You wanted to do European style stuff?
No, just picture strips for older.
Right, okay.
You haven't read the book, have you?
But I had the flu. He's not
It's all
getting
in here, guys. Maybe we should have a hands up. Who hasn't read?
Anybody here read his book?
Oh,
Look at that.
Not bad. Thank you.
There we go. Not bad.
All right. Well, for those who haven't read it, oh God. In 25 words, 2000 AD, people didn't stop reading it, so they got older. So it occurred to you and others that maybe you could do a big brother to 2000 AD, something the older reader could
aspire to, kind of thing.
Move on up to. And, as you say, John, there were heavy metal. There were older comics coming in from Europe. Simoc was one, a Spanish comic, which is comic backwards.
Yeah, that's right.
And so all those things suggested there was a market for, not adult comics, but comics for the older reader.
And was it difficult to convince the management of this, or did you get a bit of free rein because 2000 was doing so well?
Free rein.
It would have been the time that Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns was doing so well as well, and comics were for adults.
Yeah.
For a bit.
So they must work.
Yeah. So Crisis was meant to be a superhero comic sold to the Yankees, the Americans. But one day Pat Mills rang me up and said, I think we can make my story political. So I'm...
And Pat's not very opinionated.
No, I've got a phone in my hand and I'm thinking, well, this is the guy who wrote Charlie's War, which is extremely good commentary on the First World War. If anyone, I'll let him run with this notion of making it political or even pertinent. And that's what gave birth to Third World War. But suddenly then, because Crisis was a 2-issue comic, you had John Smith at the one end doing superhero stuff, and Pat at the front doing something a bit different.
And it didn't gel?
Well, it's hard to say, really.
Yeah, I enjoyed it.
Yeah.
So that was one reader. Duncan, comics-wise, were you always into comics? Or?
Yeah, pretty much. Usual route of going through reading things like Wizard and Chips and Buster. Like my brothers, we each had comics at the weekend, and usual thing where you just swap them around, you get the annuals, and progressed on. I remember them when the first Marvel started coming in, but they weren't called Marvel. Was it Power Comics used to print them?
Yes.
So my brother's friend's elder brother got these things. I was exposed to Spider-Man fairly early, and that was fairly mind-blowing stuff. So yeah.
And that was you addicted?
Pretty much, yeah. I never went really went the DC route or anything like that. I mean, it all got very good when obviously Mighty Morphin Marvel came in, and I was hooked, pretty much. But I mean, it really was only for those early years, honestly. I mean, that's the stuff I look back at fondly. I think mostly. I won't go back and read it because I worry it won't live up to what it was.
Yeah.
In my expanded mind as a youth.
I think the early Spider-Man does actually live up to.
Yeah, I mean that stuff I actually have revisited, and all the teen angst stuff. That stuff's fantastic. That still holds together really well.
Yeah,
but
I think Stan was at a peak there. He really nailed it.
But I pretty much I was always into that sort of material. I mean, so from that to Star Wars and 2000 AD, obviously at the same time.
Yeah, it was all
that's the triumvirate
was happening at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it's those things. It was just like there couldn't be anything better. There really couldn't have been. Anything better could have been drawing it or making it. Boy, was that a mistake! And that turns out like, wow, it's not as fun as it looks. It's hard work. Yeah. And maybe I should have just carried on reading them and enjoying them.
Pete, were you always into comics?
As far as I remember the first Mighty World of Marvel coming out.
Yeah.
And that crappy paper and the green colour that they put on it. Yeah. But it was full of good stuff, wasn't it?
I remember being ecstatic one time when there was more colour pages. Remember they doubled the number of colour pages? Oh, wow! Some of these are in colour.
I don't even remember. I just remember liking all the drawing. Yeah. It wasn't the fact that it would just... Was it with that early Kirby, the early Steve Ditko, and with John Severin drawing the Hulk?
Yeah.
And stuff. It's just really, really good stuff. And when I was sort of 6 when it came out. It's sort of the best. I learned, you know,
we probably learned to read with it. It's a massive scale.
Yeah, and it's just... Yeah. And I drew. I used to like drawing as well. And it was like, there's lots of drawing in this.
Well, that's the thing. You do that thing where you copy out the panels and things like that, don't you? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's just stayed with me. I don't know. And you never get better, do you?
Sean, were you?
Yeah, I mean, we're all the same age, and we all started off, with Mighty World of Marvel and all that. But no, I'd read anything. Marvel was top of the list when I was like 6 or 7. And
you couldn't get much else over
there wasn't much stuff. It's not like it is now for you young people, where you can get everything. There was like Duncan said, when Star Wars and 2000 came out, they were the only 2 sci-fi things there were. Really, you couldn't get anything else. But now, in the same and all that. So I'd read all the Marvel stuff, and I'd like DC too, but I'd also read all the British comics. Apart from the war, occasionally I'd buy a war comic if I was really desperate for a comic to read. But and it wasn't until I started working on the girls' comics I actually started reading them, and that turns out they were really good.
Yeah, they were great.
They were much better than the ones that aimed at boys. Because the boys' comics were sport and war, which I wasn't remotely interested in. But all the girls' stuff, they had a story in, I think it was in Ginty or Tammy. It's called The Comp, and it's just about a comprehensive school. And it's just like Grange Hill, but in a comic. But it was, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah. Halo Jones was so fantastic when he came into 2000, because it's the best of both worlds.
About Spider-Man, about the soap opera bits in Spider-Man.
Yes,
is the
exactly.
Bits, when I read that stuff now, just flick past those fighting pages because they're really boring. It's the stuff,
Well, it's actually like the superhero movies now, isn't it? The best bits are all the nice small personal moments.
Oh, you just sort of glaze over the
You've got the 20-minute fight where you take a snooze because you've seen it all before.
There was a great bit in Thor when he goes for a soda in a soda shop, and he's just sitting chatting to people in the street. I have no idea what the story was about, but Thor's just sitting there, and I thought, this is great.
Good stuff.
The splash page of that one is like he's sat in front of a massive ice cream sundae, isn't it?
That's right. See, we all remember the same thing. No, that's right. I'm just. There's so much we could talk about, so I'm going to go to the audience.
Can I just ask a question though?
Steve,
were you into comics before you got into publishing?
Be honest.
You have to buy his book.
No. I read in my youth, in the 60s, everyone read a comic. If you were a girl, you read Ginty or Tammy. Well, in the 70s. But to answer Sean's question, yes, I read Valiant, which was a stablemate of Tiger and Lion, and I read that up to the point when Rolling Stone magazine came out, and I decided to swap Valiant for the West Coast with its sex, drugs and rock and roll.
These are big emotional choices you have to make, aren't they? I mean, it's a financial choice as well.
My friend swapped Fantastic Four #1 for an issue of Jimmy Olsen, but he went on to become a good comic dealer, So, can I just ask the audience, any questions? Just put your hand up, don't be shy now. Yes?
Yeah, at the moment, 2080 is going through a sort of second golden age. You've seen outside creators taking an interest, like James Robinson doing a short story a few weeks ago, his first ever. Eric Powell and others doing a stint on 3 Comic Day editions, and George Perez having an interest in joining a Judge Dredd story. Would you guys ever come back doing like a short story for them in the near future?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think for most of us it's been a long time since we've done anything for 2008. But if they ask and you've got time, why not? I mean,
if it's the right thing,
it doesn't feel like you've left it behind and gone on to better things. It's just that things happen where you just don't have the time to do that stuff no more necessarily. Going to do American comics take a lot longer than doing a 6-page 2000 story. So, but stuff like that is still easy to fit in sometimes. I've done a few covers occasionally, but I haven't done any strip stuff for years.
I mean, I did more covers than anything else ultimately. When David Bishop was Tharg, he saved my bottom completely when I can't remember what the work was that fell through, but he gave me a series of covers to do for 2000, and they were great fun. It was just really nice just to.
Did you get freehand that? Can you do what you wanted, or were you told what to put in the cover?
I think not an awful lot more than the brief of what the cover was and a vague idea of what was going on in it, but I was left to my own devices mostly. It was just good fun. Drawing the interiors is always a lot more work, obviously.
I was slightly annoyed a couple of weeks ago when they brought Devlin back and they didn't ask me to do the cover for it.
Dear.
But then again, when they brought him back about 10, 15 years ago, I did do the cover for it and it was really bad, so maybe...
You're unemployable.
Because when I first started painting digitally and I didn't really know what I was doing. So yeah, I mean, it's my own fault.
Are you not a bit busy with Ed Brubaker?
Oh yeah, but I can always fit something in.
Yeah.
When you're waiting for scripts.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that in public.
Good job you didn't then, isn't it?
I did a picture of John Constantine for the Steve Dillon Memorial book the other week, and they didn't use it in the end because DC wouldn't give us permission.
Is that right?
So they had to use it as a print rather than in the book. But I tweeted it, and the editor of Hellblazer said, "Oh, do you want to do 6 covers?"
Was he actually aware that you'd drawn that long stick?
Yeah. But there was a bit where Brian Hitch tweeted, said, "Oh, that's really good, you should draw Hellblazer." I said, "I did for 3 years." Not that I expect everybody to know everything I've done.
But it's nice to know that effort was worthwhile.
Yeah. He said, "Oh yeah, that's when I had really little kids, I didn't read any comics."
So Brian didn't even go into Wikipedia and check your CV before.
No, he just liked the drawing.
Now, Future Shocks, they were good actually. They were a great way for A, as opposed to make up deadline problems. Is that correct, Steve?
Yes.
And B, to try out new people. Alan Moore's first stuff was Future Shocks.
It was. Well, most of the writers, Neil Gaiman, Grant Morrison, John Smith. Although, if you read the book, you'll find an interesting story about his first published.
I think we need to buy this book.
Is this just a long advert for your book?
Well, I haven't come all the way from Euston Station.
No, it's a long way, isn't it?
That's the book there.
£9.99.
Available on Kindle as well if you don't want a paper copy.
Yeah, there's a Kindle. But does the Kindle have the photographs in it, though?
I think they usually do.
I've got a paper copy, don't I? Yeah, they usually do, yeah.
They usually do, okay. But I think either it was Pat Mills or Kelvin Gosnell, whose name we should name check here, the kind of in-house editor, or Kevin O'Neill, who said we need a slot to try out new people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it worked really well. Then after that we had Time Twisters.
Yeah. Was that like Chronocops and things like that?
Oh yeah, Chronocops. What a story.
Yeah.
Wow. Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons. It's got creeping nuns. That's all you need to know.
Wow. All downhill after that.
Yeah.
Chronocops was the peak, and then I stopped 2000 after that.
It was the peak.
It was the peak.
Yeah. No, but it was a really good way of getting things. And as Sean's saying, you can slot in 6 pages when you're busy. You can't slot in 30 quite so easily. No. You know.
The Future Shocks were 3 or 4 pages, weren't they?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's perfect. It's a perfect way to learn how to do it, because until you actually do it, especially if you're working from someone else's script, you can do as many sample pages as you like, but you'll tend to self-edit and not draw the hard things.
That's what I wish I'd done first, rather than try to
I never did.
pages.
None of us ever did any Future Shocks, did we?
You did some later, didn't you?
Yeah, they did. What are they called? Strange Tales? No, not that. I don't know.
Yeah,
I did a couple of those, but that was like years and years later.
But it's not how you got in.
No, I learned on doing girls' comics, so I could draw normal stuff. But
I would imagine as
I did offer to do one a couple of years ago because a friend of mine was pitching to 2000. A guy called Eddie Robson, who is now writing lots of stuff, but at the time he was struggling. So I said, "Well, I'll draw you future, if you want."
Nice.
And I never managed to fit it in. I got as far as
I got
as far as laying it out, and then Matt Smith, the new latest star, was like, "When?" I said, "No, next month." And that. But in the end, John M. Burns drew it. So
I've heard of him.
Yeah. So he ended up doing a brilliant job anyway. So Eddie was very lucky.
Oh, that's cool. That's very good.
But in terms of getting on as an artist, if you want to be an artist, I would imagine, I'm not an artist, but I would imagine seeing your work published for the first time is when you learn, you can see you just think, oh my God.
It's horrible.
Yeah. Yeah, you never think, oh, that came out really well.
Yeah.
You just see all the bad bits.
Yeah.
You still see all the bad bits.
Yeah.
Never
goes away, no.
Yeah.
But it's a great way of...
Well, you said last night, didn't you? The thrill of seeing your stuff in print has gone. Because
it's gone a bit.
Every time I get a new issue of my stuff, I still think, oh, yeah. In an actual comic,
Yeah.
But that does diminish, definitely. But in the good old, the beginning, when I started, had my first 2000 AD cover or something like that, and seeing that in the shop. There was one time, it was an American comic I'd drawn, and I was in Forbidden Planet in London, and I saw a guy pick it up off the shelf. It was like on the New Week's comic shelf, and he picks it up and he was looking for it really loads and that. And I was just about to go and say, I do that, as he put it back on the shelf and walked away.
Have you ever actually said it to anybody in a shop?
No, because we were in a shop once, weren't we? And
with John and Jeanette.
No, it was in the bottom of Gosh when Hayley Campbell used to work.
Oh, that was funny. That was only a few years ago.
It was when I was drawing a criminal thing, and this guy came up to us and said, "Oh, how much I really like criminal." He goes, and I said, "Well, I've got the next issue in my bag because I've got an advanced copy." So I think I gave it to him and that, and Hayley just like pissed herself laughing because she thought it was very egotistical to even sort of admit that you'd done anything.
I've got a few copies in my bag.
Duncan's got loads of sketchbooks with him as well.
Well,
I've got something else on straight away.
Yeah, I think there's a signing schedule outside. I haven't read it yet. Your names may be on it because I didn't know it.
But I think all weekend, if anybody wants stuff signed, you just happen to bump into us.
Yeah,
we're all happy to do that.
Steve will probably be in the Shakespeare bar, which is just about.
It's your signing station, isn't it?
It's like an unofficial kind of like off Broadway.
That's right. They've got a beer called the Shakespeare. I had to have it because
it's only polite, isn't it?
As my Canadian pal said, well, at least it's a good pun,
No, it isn't.
A lot of people yesterday were commenting about the Will Eisner exhibition up the stairs, how large he drew, because we normally see Eisner stuff in American format, but it's really, really
it's
big.
Huge,
Originals. Do you guys draw big or?
Well, we did it for the
Spirit Special newspaper that we put out.
You did yours physically, didn't you? I did mine digitally. In the
I drew mine. Usually draw half up. So if it was printed A4, you draw it about A3. But that's the Spirit newspaper. If anybody's seen it already, it's massive. It's like this big. So I stupidly drew mine on paper, and so did Brian Hitch. We did it quarter up. And mine was too big. It was the piece of art was as big as that table. It was too big.
It just makes it a nightmare to scan, isn't it?
Oh yeah, and it took like 8 sections of scan to put together. But I remember when I was drawing like Devlin for 2000 or for the magazine, because it was painted. I thought, I'll paint it twice up, so that's A2 because it was a bigger comic. And I remember taking it into the offices, and like Dave Bitch was like, what are we going to do with this? And because it used to go around a drum scanner.
Yeah.
I don't know if they still do it like that, but there's and so you have to do it on bendy paper that wrapped around a drum. Because I learned that because the thing I did before that was Armitage, and I did it on. I did it double page spreads, half up, so they were still massive, but it wasn't bendy. So they had
to strip it.
They had to strip it, which means it pulls off the backing of the board.
Terrifying.
And then it's designed to be done like that. But then when I got all the artwork back, they'd sort of like stacked it all together, so all the fibres from the tear had stuck to the artwork, and it ruined every single page apart from 2. So you just learn from those things. I mean, it didn't really matter. It was all terrible art when anyway.
He's his own worst critic, isn't he? Pete, do you draw big or?
No. Well, I haven't drawn anything for a few years, but no, I tend to. It don't matter.
The first time I saw like European art, I realised they draw really small.
Yeah.
No, it's only quarter.
Well, actually, I was reading. There's that Draw magazine that's about drawing.
Yes.
That Mike Manley runs. There's a Sienkiewicz interview in a fairly recent one, and he was talking about these days. He don't bother with sizing. He's inking. I can't remember what he said he were inking, but he's blowing it up like 4 times the size, so it can like really scratchy and do it, and then you scan it and you shrink it down. It don't matter. He just fancied doing something with lots of detail in, and being able to use big brushes. But then we were talking about doing stuff print size, because
I've tried that as well.
Because a mate of his showed him some French stuff a few years ago, and it was actually smaller than the print size. Can't remember who it was, but
it's crazy.
But it don't matter these days.
Wasn't it Bisley that when he painted Slane, like every page was a different size?
and on a different board.
Yeah, which makes it, when it was hand lettered as well, it makes it right pain because the lettering has to adjust every single.
Jeff Barrow did that when I worked with Jeff on his thing. He's just really bad at measuring. So you get panels, and there'd be long panels, and they'd run across a double page, and it'd actually be like half an inch wider at one end. You'd be putting these together and you'd be thinking, it don't fit. You'd like to trying to template them, and it's just like...
Didn't you actually have to ask him to draw a bit extra on one or something? Or was it just fill in a detail if you got to ink or something?
I've inked little bits of stuff. Inked it digitally, but no, he knows. I just rang up, so shall I fill it in? You missed a bit. But these days, it doesn't matter what you do. It really doesn't matter what you do.
Yeah. Well, there's something called an overhead projector that Dave Gibbons introduced, whereby you could do your initial layout on a...
This is like the article, isn't it?
Yeah, same size, and then project it onto your twice-up board.
Yeah.
Early ways of
nowadays, even if you draw on paper still, that doesn't usually leave your studio. You end up scanning it and just sending the file.
Well, we're with the production team these days as well, aren't we? There is no production team.
Yeah, well, that stuff that DC used to pay someone, or Marvel or Fleetwood used to pay someone to do.
You're doing.
We do it for free now.
Yeah. You should invoice them.
Yeah.
No, Frank Quitely. Vincent Deegan, Frank Quitely, he tends to pencil now and then scan it into his Wacom.
No, he don't.
No, he doesn't.
He still just pencils.
I was in his studio.
No, I know. I work with him. Shut up, you. No, he does them little layouts. If you ever seen his sketchbooks, I don't know how he does it, and doesn't have thick glasses. But he does these tiny little layouts, and he's worked out a room from like every angle on paper, but he pencils digitally.
Well, when he was doing Batman, he was penciling.
That was then. This is now.
We're in the future now.
Oh, sorry, I'm a bit
of a day. He actually finishes it off when he inks it. He inks it in pencil.
Digital?
No, he doesn't.
No?
He inks it physically in pencil. No, he's seen it. I went to his exhibition, so he draws on it. He uses his Wacom to draw on, to do his layout, so he can shift stuff about.
Yeah.
And enlarge
prints that out.
And then he prints that out in blue, and that's sort of loose.
Oh, yeah.
And then he tightens it up in pencil. So all his finished originals are pencil.
Yeah.
They're not inked. Nothing's inked. And then Rob Miller, who he works with, he scans it all and tarts it all up to make it look like ink. So it done...
Digitally processes it.
Yeah. And he cleans it up so all the white... Yeah, tarts it up. That's what he's doing, he's tarting it up. So it looks... But I had Jason, the cartoonist who lives in France, the Norwegian fella, I had a conversation with him, and he put something online about him reading the first Jupiter's book, and he said, I really like Frank Quitely, but I don't know what he's doing. He's not filling it in. It don't look like he's inking. And I said he's not inking it. That's why he's not filling blacks in. He's not doing certain stuff. And he said, I think something's lost. But then I saw a review of a recent thing Vinny did, and reviewer said, "Oh, I think he's just penciling it. He's not inking it." And then you just want to go, "Well, he wasn't inking it anyway. You just don't know what he's talking about." But this is
the amazing thing is, of course, you were colouring him, weren't you? The amazing thing about seeing, I mean, it happens with a lot of people's artists when you take away the line work, see the colouring that's remained. Quite often, you see you see an awful lot more work in the colour that you don't really notice because of the black line. It's even more prevalent with the colour that you were doing with Vinny, I think.
Oh yeah,
or Jeff Jarrett as well.
It's open. There's no blacks.
You were giving it volume and space, and so there's a lot of work in there.
Anyway, back to the Mighty One.
Sorry, went off.
That was 5 minutes.
It's very boring artist.
Commercial breakdown. That's how I was saying.
Here's the book.
Any questions, folks? Yes, there's one over there.
As artists, do you have your own style, or do you?
No, you got to ask Steve a question.
Yeah. As an artist,
as artists, do you feel you have your own style? If so, how do you feel if you're taking on another artist's work, and do you feel you have to change yours, or have you all felt you can? And when you're selecting somebody to actually bring in to carry on a story, how do you make that selection? Is it who's available, or do you have to think this person can do that?
Who's in the office that Friday? Yeah.
Well, that's how I got a lot of work.
Yeah.
Practicalities.
Who's available? But you might ask the artist, who do you want to take this over while you're sick. You try and make it a productive communal choice.
Something like Dread, because so many people have drawn it. There's no sort of right way to do it. We, as artists, we come in trying to, not necessarily emulate, but be influenced by, our favourite ones that did it before, and trying to sort of live up to
classics, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
so
that's the point. As an artist, do you feel I've got to change my style because of, or do you actually?
No, I think ideally any stylistic change serves the story. It shouldn't really matter what the characters are.
I obviously did when it did help. But I mean, that was entirely my choice.
When I first drew Dread, I wanted to look like Brendan McCarthy because he was my favourite Dread artist at the time, and another time I draw him, it looked a bit like someone else, and I'd seen some more stuff. It just depends. The same with like doing Batman. Every time I've drawn Batman, it's always been. In my head, it's always been different. It might all look the same.
I always found with Steve and David and people who were editors at 2000, they weren't dictatorial about that sort of stuff. You just were left on your own. Yeah. And I think American companies are much more. You've got to they
character. How to draw comics the Marvel way.
And they were never. That was one of the good things that once I'd done a bit of American work, I realised how much freedom I'd got working for 2000.
Yeah, 2000. I think
that's true.
You felt it was quite restrictive, America, yeah.
No, well, compared, it's not. You sort of get around it, but or you live with it. But there were none of that. It was you were treated more like a sort of an adult.
Yeah, and much more open to taking chances on new people. We were all new when Steve took a chance on us, and that worked out okay.
And I was never.
You might turn in an occasional terrible job, but give us another chance.
You just bought my pint, and that was it.
That's what you did, isn't it?
A lot of pints were drunk.
But it was true what you said about who's in the office on a Friday.
Yeah.
I'd always deliver my art on a Friday lunchtime, and we'd always go to the pub because I just knew. And then it's like, can you do this cover by Monday? Yeah, of course I can. Yeah.
Sorry.
It definitely helped. When I moved out of London, it definitely
dropped off
a lot. Yeah.
Then you got Hellblazer, didn't you? So.
Yeah, it didn't really matter. But
I was with Kevin O'Neill not Kevin O'Neill, Colin McNeil in the Marvel offices one time, and this guy heard us talking. I forgot his name now. One of the DC editors, and he came around. One of the Marvel editors, and he came around and says, "Oh, Colin, what are you doing in New York?" "Oh, we're just on our way to San Diego." "Oh, while you're in the offices, could you draw this for me?" And he sat him down at a desk. And Colin said, "I'm on holiday. I'm going to San Diego." Such are legends made. Yes. Was there a question at the back? I thought I saw somebody's hand there. Don't be shy now. You can ask them in because people talk for 10 minutes. Do you guys still read comics? Duncan, do you still read?
I'm not reading so much, I must admit. I find I buy more than I read.
He just took the piss at me at breakfast because I was saying how good this week's Spider-Man was.
It was just the sheer ebullient enthusiasm. It was.
Has anybody read this week's Spider-Man when he's now back down to like being a zero?
Who's drawing it?
It's Stuart Immonen's drawing it.
Oh yeah.
Stuart Immon's
I've looked at them.
Yeah.
I'll take
the colouring's awful.
Oh yeah, the colour's really horrible, really shiny.
Really awful.
Oh, is it Pete Doherty? So we'll need to get Spider-Man. But
I read some. I mean, I'm still reading. I read everything Sean does. I mean, I'm really enjoying his Kill or Be Killed.
Oh yeah,
it's a great thing about.
It's a right laugh, isn't it? I
mean, it's a bundle of laughs.
It kind of cheers you up in the morning,
It does me. What do you say?
It's about where you're coming from there, really, isn't it?
Yeah, there's some jokes in it occasionally.
Yeah, occasionally. Yeah,
it's just basically you follow artists or writers.
Yeah, I think
you read the stuff you want to read.
Yeah,
it's the nice thing about finishing drawing Hellboy. So when Mike came back and was drawing it, I could read it again as a fan.
Yeah.
That was the best.
Yeah.
I still read Dread, especially if John Wagner's writing it.
Oh yeah.
I'll read that.
Yeah, that's true.
And Al Ewing's been good recently, I think.
Yeah.
And Dread, there's some really good stuff. Do you still read, Steve? Comics or?
Well, no, I find I'm very busy writing about myself, so I write.
Wait a minute, his new book's not out until next year, so you can't plug that
yet. Curacell's writing about to go.
But I do like to do the Guardian quick crossword, and just underneath that is always Doonesbury, and then Steve
Bell.
So that keeps me going.
I thought newspapers made a bad mistake when they stopped running comic strips. I mean, the Metro, the new editor, decided he doesn't like comics, so he got rid of everything. Because comic strips are one thing, the newspaper is different from digital. You open up your newspaper, you're doing the Sudoku or whatever, and there's a comic strip. I think it's a big mistake.
If you're into a particular comic strip, you'll buy that paper because that strip's in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those people.
Did the Guardian not try to cancel Doonesbury or something one time? There was a big, huge protest and they just brought it back.
I think what they brought back was reprints.
Yeah, it's all reprints.
Right.
So that's half and half. But I was interviewed by John Freeman as part of this festival, and my big bugbear, as I said to him, was the state of picture strips in newspapers in this country. It's appalling, really. Take the Daily Mirror. They've got this thing. It's awful. I mean, I could just die. And then they've got the Parishes, which is a reprint from about 1,000
years ago. Yeah.
And it's somewhat, because the heritage of everything we're talking about here goes back to the kind of cartoons, I guess.
Yeah. Well, in the 1800s they had cartoons in newspapers. It's just now we don't.
Yeah, and that's where we've all come from.
Presidents instead.
Yeah. Or it's American stuff, which I don't mind, but I'd like to see the next generation of Fegredos, Dohertys and Phillips come forward.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe 20 years ago I'd be interviewing people and some of them worked in newspaper strips, they worked in daily strips, but none of you have ever done daily strips, have you?
I did some Dread.
For
in the Daily Star.
Oh, yeah.
That was because I was going on holiday to France for a month, and I couldn't afford to not work for a month, so I asked for some work that was on small pieces of paper. I cut all the pieces of paper to size and drew all the panel borders before I left England to go on holiday. I just sat in the garden in France for a month. And
the artwork, the original was about that big, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I drew it. It wasn't even, it was a bit small. Quite small. So
that's fun. That's good.
It was much easier to transport.
That's a really good idea.
And I paid enough to pay for the holiday.
And who was the writer of that one, do you remember? Was it Mark Miller?
No, I can't. He might have been Alan Mackenzie.
Yeah.
All right.
Went downhill a bit after Wagner and Grant.
Well, the Wagner and Grant
it was a fun exercise
into,
to have to do a comic strip rather than a comic, because they are totally different things. Because you've got to recap every first panel's a recap, and then there's third panel's a cliffhanger, and then you repeat it again every day. And it must be very hard to write that.
Have you ever read Little Orphan Annie, the original?
No.
Every day was a day in the story, and then the Sunday strip summarised all the events of the past week. Kind of moved it ahead, but in such a way that if you missed Sunday, you could follow the story.
Quite a lot of American strips did like that, didn't they? Where if your paper only had the Sunday strip, you'd still be caught up with the story.
That's right.
If you hadn't read all the Daily Show.
Didn't they also do that one where Sunday strips they'd print them in different formats, so you
the first
have a panel.
The first tier would be.
Some newspapers run them down the way, actually, instead of across the way. Yeah, that's right. Oh, gone are the days. Nostalgia. Folks, we're actually running out of time because Pete Doherty talks so much. Is there any...
Sorry.
Well, I only invited him because his name was Pete, and Pete Milligan couldn't come. So, do we have a final question? Yes, up the back there.
I can't say anything.
No, you can't from here.
Do you have any newcomers that you have that you can recommend to everybody to have a look at who's just coming into the business now? Like, for example, Kazar was a recent new one to the 2018, and I would like to see if there's any newcomers coming into the comic scene, either 2008 or American comics.
Are there any newcomers that you like that you would recommend? I mean, Stuart Eminen's not exactly a newcomer.
No,
he's an old poop like us, isn't he?
Yeah.
I can't think of. I'm not sure I'm informed enough anymore.
It's like if you ask us what comics we read, we'll go blank and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, most new stuff isn't aimed at old farts like us anyway. So.
But you pick up on things, don't you? You know, like because I do a sketching panel every year at Thought Bubble, and I do 2. And after me, because the people who are picked. I mean, I picked Sean were on this year, and I picked, I said get Sean, and last year I I got Mignola on, because these are people I know. But a lot of the people on the panels are new. I don't know them. They're a lot younger than me usually. And it's nice to meet them and see. And there are a lot of people who work on that DC Young Animal stuff. So Marley Saccone was on, and Joel Jones, who don't know her stuff. But it's nice to see.
She's good.
Yeah, it's nice to see stuff. And I know they've been working a year or two. But it's nice to see different things that I'm not aware of. That I wouldn't come across.
How new is Becky?
She's been going a while.
Becky's quite a while, yeah. There's always good people coming along, though.
Oh, yeah. Still seems to be a youngster compared to old poops like that.
It's good
that aging at the same rate.
Even though we can't name many people by name, but it's good that there's always new people coming in, and there's always room for them. It's one of the best things about doing comics is that it's not competitive. We don't feel like if someone new comes in that they're taking our work away, because there's room for everybody.
Well, it's exciting. It's actually what actually keeps you in. I mean, when someone like Chris Samney comes along,
when new guys comes along,
it's genuinely exciting because it's something
we're all
new
fans
to look
still.
forward to. Yeah. I mean, it gets a little bit off-putting when you realise they're still good and they're getting better.
Hang on, you're only 30. I hate him.
How fast did you throw it?
What?
Yeah.
So we all hate Chris Samney.
Not bitter.
Chris who?
That's the attitude.
Yeah, exactly.
He did a page in the Spirit newspaper, if you haven't seen a copy already.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Oh, we forgot to plug our new publication, the Spirit newspaper.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I've heard of that.
He was last minute replacement because Michael Cho, who's a guest here this weekend, couldn't do his page for a number of reasons, so he did a little illustration for us, but we got Chris instead. And Michael goes, "Well, yeah, of course you did. Why would you want me when you could have him?"
That's nice.
He's done Daredevil for a long time.
That's what I think he's relaunching Captain America next month.
Yeah, and he did a long.
He did a Black Widow thing last year.
Yeah,
it's really nice, bouncy, cartoony.
Welcome to the Chris Samney appreciation.
If he just showed loads of his stuff, that would be much better.
Yeah.
Well, I should have done that. I always use these conventions to go around to the small publishers, because some of those artists are really good, and they're just doing their own thing. And I also used to buy a Vertigo comic every month, because that was kind of 2000 AD's child, Vertigo.
Yeah.
And
not anymore.
No, not anymore.
Nobody's
but Karen's away to Dark Horse. Karen Berger's going to be doing her own imprint at Dark Horse called Berger Books or something.
Called Vertigo 2.
So that'll be interesting. You could call it Vertigo 2, but DC may sue you.
Or is Shelley doing Vertigo 2 at IDW? I don't know.
But we'll need to see.
Pete could have told us, couldn't he?
Well, yeah, but we've only got 5 minutes.
No, the other Pete. Sorry.
Oh, the other Pete.
Yeah, because he's doing something for it, isn't it?
Yeah.
For Shelley's imprint.
Sadly, folks, we're going to have to wind up here now. You probably didn't get the message, but Steve has a book out called The Mighty One, and Sean's done the Spirit anniversary treatment for Will Eisner.
Which is much bigger than Steve's book.
Is much bigger than Steve's
It's like
book.
a bedsheet.
Much bigger than Steve's book. But you should buy both, and if you put the Spirit along at the end of your room and you put Steve's there at pretty much the same size. Right, so thanks very much for being such a nice audience. Could you show a great Lakes appreciation to our guests? Thanks very much.
Thank you for listening. Find out more about the festival at comicartfestival.com. Find out more about the show and how to contact us at comicartpodcast.uk. Find us on Twitter, Facebook and Instagram. Music composed by Pop Noir.
This podcast is part of Britpod Scene, an independent network of uniquely British podcasts that's always growing. Check out BritpodScene.com or BritpodScene on Twitter to find out more.